here we are. It's the end of the NFL regular season, Week 17.
Yep.
And your fantasy football leagues, if you're in a good one, should be over with already. Your champion should be crowned. You should be either happy, sad, or me.
Either happy or crying.
Yeah, and I'm on the crying side of it
because
making the incorrect starts, but went with my gut instinct just because of a hot streak, which most people should do. Decided to start Blake Bortles over Jared Goff in our championship game, and I was at the Rams-Titans game watching Jared Goff and Todd Gurley ruin my fantasy hopes to be a champion in our league, which I can't complain. Like, it's hard because I can't get mad because I'm a Rams fan, and we went, and then right now I'm wearing our Rams NFC West Division champion shirt right now. So, the irony of all of it, I was watching Todd Gurley destroy my hopes at winning a championship.
Irony?
I don't know if that's the right.
Talking about irony?
Yeah.
Let me tell you about irony.
Okay, go for it.
Irony is when, so remember, I don't know, maybe episode 14, 15, we talked about how this year's been a lot about the matchups. It's been a nice year for matchups.
Right.
Even with hot players, even with, this player's been doing well for the last few weeks, so they're hot, they're your superstar. Really, it's been a matchup type of year. And the week we played, I decided to go with Ben Roethlisberger, who had a great matchup, and was hot. Actually had an okay matchup, but was on fire against Cam Newton, who was, starting to pick up steam. But Cam Newton had an amazing matchup. So I decided I was going to start Big Ben. And Big Ben put up 20.
Uh-huh.
And Cam put up 40.
Did he put up 40?
He put up 40. Yeah, he put up 39.
He put up 40?
He put up 39.
30. Ooh.
He did. Against the Packers.
I remember you talking about that matchup,
irony.
too.
Irony is when
you talking about
you
that
lose
too.
Because your real team in real life sucks.
It's tough. It's tough to go play against a guy against your team when everything's on the line.
And I feel like that's kind of the same
but
thing.
But you went with the hot streak player though.
Yeah, so did you.
Which is Big Ben.
Which is funny.
I think, in my opinion, based on your team, the one that let you down was, your elite wide receiver, Julio Jones, in a prime matchup against Tampa Bay, the worst secondary.
What did he do? 5 points?
5 points.
Yeah, that sucked. Ricky Seals-Jones, 1 point. That hurt, too. And I picked up the Rams defense. I was going to start them.
But remember you talking about Eric Ebron, though, too. You were talking about getting another tight ends, and then Eric Ebron gets a touchdown that week.
Yeah.
Oh, man, yeah, and Rams defense, I should have never dropped them. Yeah. I should have never dropped them.
An extra 13 points, would that have made a difference?
Well, Bortles and Hunt helped me advance to the championship that week.
Yep.
I think what hurt me the most, though, is I was an Antonio Brown owner, so that hurt me the most, him getting injured in our semifinal game. I still lucked out, though, but him not being available, because my team was basically set up for him to play to win me the championship on that Monday night. When they played or Monday after evening when they played the Texans on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
So it hurts to lose, but for me to finish where I finished at, I can't complain.
Yeah.
Because I guess the thing I can kind of boast about is that I was the top team I would say I was a consistent top team in our league finally, after especially having my worst year last year, even though I didn't have a bad record.
Yeah.
It just didn't fall in place for me last year. So next year, like we've been talking about each week, now we're going to go to 6. We're going to move to 6 teams in our playoffs. Top 2, the division winners will have that bye week, which is how it's set up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be interesting next year, and the schedule will get mixed up just a little bit.
I'm interested to see how some of our players in our league specifically do with just a little bit, because it kind of heightens awareness. There's a little bit more pressure.
Yeah.
As opposed, if you're losing a game back to back, you got to think I got to make a move because I can't fall out of the playoff hunt.
Right, because you don't have to worry about.
Because our leagues are typically close. There's typically not somebody.
Well, this year just made it
defeated and one
reason
undefeated.
Why there's only going to be 6 teams this year, because basically there's only five teams that were good.
Yeah.
That had a winning record in our league, and everyone else was had a losing record, which is usually how fantasy football is if you're like in our league, a 10-team league. But next year's just going to be even more interesting now, because I feel like we try to add a little twist to each season as it goes along.
Yeah.
I don't think nothing crazy drastic has happened in our league over the last couple of years in terms of rules changes and stuff like that. But fantasy football the real fantasy football leagues that play through 16 weeks are over with. Your champion has been crowned. Your runner-up is crying, and you know who finished in last place in your league. And in our league, it was my dad that finished as the weak bush, which no one's once has talked about.
I don't think I even went and checked to see
because it wasn't hyped up because it was just
that they were both mad. No, actually, your dad was upset.
My dad was upset because he didn't make the playoffs.
Ray just accepted it.
Ray just was like whatever, but then he still won. My dad's team just finished it off like his team played in. It was one of his worst years too. So I mean, it kind of you never know when a bad year can happen.
His team was just unlucky this year.
Yeah, he had a lot of great players on his team too. I mean, LaShawn McCoy, Tyreek Hill, Carson Wentz,
Jacksonville's defense.
Jacksonville, he picked them up earlier in the season. I had them once. You had them once.
Yeah,
it's crazy how they bounced around in the first 3 weeks of the season in our league, and then after that, they just were the elite defense in football. Okay, so what we're going to kind of discuss in today's episode, we're going to kind of keep it short and sweet since, there is teams that are playing, like if you're in one of those jump-in ESPN leagues, you are playing in Week 17 because your playoffs are a 2-week based system where, top 4 teams usually go into the playoffs. Week 14, 15 is your first round or semifinals basically, and then 16 and 17 is your championship. There's a lot of players that are out this week, just because of, either injuries or playoffs. The season's in. There's
Which
no
is
point
why
in
it's
playing.
stupid that your league is still playing right now.
Yeah, and I mean, that's why I'm not a fan of the ESPN leagues.
No.
I mean, I just jump in them just to have extra leagues just to kind of keep my brain going, going around. But I didn't even try to pay attention to my ESPN leagues. I just stayed focused on our league. And, yeah, I mean, you shouldn't be playing in Week 17. This is the reason why, with players being out. Like, for the Rams example, Todd Gurley basically carried whoever had Todd Gurley on their team. Our champion had Todd Gurley on his team.
I feel like the percentage.
Todd Gurley has been on our championship team. He's been on the champions team the last 3 years. Since he's been in the league, he's been in our champions team each year. Last year, yes, he had a bad season. This past year, this current season, he, in my opinion, and this is very biased because I am a Rams fan, he is the MVP of this season. This hasn't been a stellar season for all players.
Yeah,
quarterback. This is a very down year for quarterbacks. There's not even a quarterback that's close to a 5,000-yard season. Yeah. There's no quarterback that's close to passing for 40 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. It's been it's been a running back season. If you really look at it, this has been in the year of the running back, and then a handful of receivers. Todd Gurley has been the best player, in my opinion, all season long and consistent. And people say, he just came up out of the last 2 weeks. He's been consistent all year long. He's got the touchdowns to prove, help out with that and the big plays.
Yeah.
And his play has helped win many people their fantasy football championship. Because there's no way you didn't make your championship unless you were the worst team and had Todd Gurley and a bunch of scrubs on your team. But what Todd Gurley's done in the last 2 weeks, Week 15 and 16, has easily got you into your championship game.
I gave you 50 points both weeks.
That's the only reason why our champion won is because Todd Gurley. None of his other players did good.
Yeah.
And if Todd Gurley didn't play good, then he wouldn't have won. So that's fantasy football. That's how it plays out. It's all a game of luck. All right, so back to the point. We're going to talk about so what we're going to do today is Jesse and I picked out our all-pro fantasy first teams.
First team all-pros.
Yeah, first team all-pro fantasy for this season based on our opinions. They might be pretty stereotypical, for who you would pick. We did it basically filling in our lineup, basically. And then we also picked our all-bust team. And so we'll go into detail probably a little bit more on that, on why we picked certain players on our bust list, stuff like that. And then what we're going to do at the end is Jesse and I, just between us two, basically like one of the Draft Now leagues, like the app you can where you can just draft a team instantaneously, or like a daily fantasy league.
Yeah, kind of like
we're going to pick our players. Basically pick our players for this week. We're going to just do snake style with us, so it's like first pick, next pick gets 2, and then 2, 2, 2, 2.
Yep.
We'll just do it like that. We won't go back and forth, so it'll be a little tricky. So each person will have 2 picks in a row. It's just between us. Basically, since we both didn't win our league championship, so we were the teams 2 and 3 in our league.
It's more that I just don't want to let go of fantasy yet.
No, and I don't think we ever want to this year. I think this year's been an extremely fun year
to actually play
fantasy football. Yes, because you really can't do nothing next week. Once playoffs starts, it's basically
playoff teams.
Basically, next week's going to be daily fantasy sports, but it was daily fantasy football, where you just you bid, you build your roster on 50,000 or 60,000, whatever the website you're using, FanDuel or DraftKings.
Yeah.
So basically that's what the playoffs is going to be. So you'll pick your teams based off that. And we might do something like that too. We might throw in like on a little teams next week or something like that. Buy some teams like $1 each or something like whatever leagues we can find.
I got some money on DraftKings.
I think I got some on one of the websites. I can't remember. I haven't done one for most of the season. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll start with our
series.
We'll go back and forth between each other. So we'll do our first All-Pro teams. We also have written down other All-Pro teams, second and third, and then we'll talk about those in the next episode. Okay, so I'll start off.
Sure.
So with my first team at quarterback, I picked Carson Wentz. I know he didn't finish the season. He got injured in week 14, I believe, is when that was, or 13. It was week 13 when they played the Rams. Yeah, week 13 when they played the Rams. And so I just felt Carson Wentz was the most consistent quarterback in fantasy football throughout the entire season until that injury. I mean, already in that last week of the season, that last game right there, week 14. It was week 14. He already had 291 yards, 4 touchdowns, the interception, just the 16 yards rushing. And he got injured on the play that was a touchdown that was called back. But no, I just felt Carson Wentz was the number one quarterback all season long. He was the most consistent quarterback. Like he only had 2 games under 20 points this year based on our league points, week 3 and week 4. So week 3 against the Giants, he had 15 points, and then week 4 he had 17 points against the Chargers. After that, he was just a scoring machine, and he didn't score no less than 22 points, which was against Seattle week 13. So Carson Wentz was probably, in my opinion, the most consistent quarterback up until the injury. And, I just felt like even if he would have played out those last 2 weeks of the season, Carson Wentz would have been the MVP of the NFL. I don't think there was a quarterback that played better than him at all this season. Definitely wasn't Tom Brady, in my opinion, because Tom Brady is the default pick as an MVP candidate, and I'll debate till the end of the time right now between him and Todd Gurley, but that's another day at a time.
Yeah.
So I'll let you talk about your quarterback.
I like Wentz too, but I went with somebody who gave you lots of value in the playoffs and had a pretty solid season overall. Finished as a number 3 quarterback, Cam Newton. Cam Newton started off kind of a so-so, and then once he started getting his legs turning and really got healthy, because you got to think he came off that shoulder surgery to start the season. First few games, he has 19 points, 11 points. Then he had a doozy 8 against New Orleans at home. Then I guess Ron Rivera said, hey, you know what? We're going to take the straps off of you and let you run free. Then he puts up 44, 37, 23, 8, 15, 20, 44, has a bye week, and then drops another, has a few more weeks, about 20 points. And then in the playoffs first round of playoffs, he gives you 17, which you're not excited about, but it's at home versus Minnesota. And against that matchup, you were probably excited to get you 17. Then he plays at home against Green Bay, where hopefully you started him, and wasn't like me and didn't start him. Puts up 40, has 4 touchdowns, 50 rushing yards, 240 passing. Then in the championship, he plays Tampa Bay. You think he's going to go off, but he only puts up 16 again that week. But he finishes the number 3 passer, number 3 quarterback, and just his dual threat ability, I don't think let you down all season. That's why he's my most consistent guy who gave you something to work with in the playoffs.
All right. Cam Newton finished off the season strong. I mean, basically that's how fantasy football works. You look for those guys that, even if they start off slow, they can finish off strong. My
rankings are kind of reflect that too.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Moving on to running back. I'll just say both my running backs right here to keep it short and sweet. I went with basically the top 2 running backs. Todd Gurley. I don't even need to go into detail about that. Todd Gurley's been the best player in fantasy football this whole season. He's been one of the top, throughout the whole season, a top 5 running back the entire year, and he's finishing as the top running back right now. Number 2, I wrote down Le'Veon Bell. Started off the season slow and then just started getting into the groove of things, along with that Pittsburgh offense, and gears started to click for them. I don't need to go into any more detail on that. So, Todd Gurley, Le'Veon Bell is my top 2 running backs for my first team All-Pro fantasy.
My backs, it's Gurley because I have to put Todd Gurley because he's so unreal this year that you can't have an All-Pro team without Todd Gurley. So he was my number 1 back. My number 2 back was actually Melvin Gordon, and that's probably a little bit more personal because I drafted Melvin Gordon. But he was really my most consistent player. Every week I felt like Melvin Gordon was going to give me probably 10 points a week. I mean, that was probably his average. There might have been a few weeks where
he just had a couple games.
He had a couple 4-pointers.
He had, there's a week 12 against Dallas. He had 8 points. Week 10, Jacksonville. That's a tough game anyways.
Yeah.
They were playing from behind in that one, so I think the game plan of him, doing anything was thrown out the window.
But he gives you
and then Denver, which is always a tough matchup, and then Philly. That was the other one too.
But
and those games, like the Philly game was like a playing from behind game too.
Yeah, and there's a Giants game where he's got 30. A Denver game where he's got 27.
Yeah,
he's got a couple 30 points and 27s. His first 3 weeks he puts up
basically 14 points.
14 points each week. I mean, that's just consistency. And then in the playoffs, what's he do in the playoffs?
14.
Gives you 14,
22, 23,
23, and 19, which I was extremely happy with. So
that's good enough for me right there.
Yeah.
It's good enough to get you by right there in your playoff games. I think those are acceptable numbers for a running back. Especially of his caliber.
Yeah.
All right, you want to do wide receiver? You want to do your 2 wide receivers?
I'm going to do my wide receivers. My wide receivers, my wide receiver 1 is going to be DeAndre Hopkins because he was a monster all season. And even when Deshaun Watson got hurt, those first 2 games were kind of like so-so. You wasn't really sure which Hopkins it was going to be because Savage was the starter, and it was really worrisome. Watson comes in and just lights the league on fire, makes you extremely happy you picked up Hopkins because he's dropping 20, 30 points a game, 40, 50 points a game in some weeks. And then Watson gets hurt and you're thinking, okay, this offense runs around Hopkins. He's confident. This is his offense basically. So I was confident that he was still going to get his targets. I just wasn't sure how he was going to make do with them. But he continued his consistent streak throughout the whole season. Let's see what Hopkins, what was his final? See what his final 4 weeks are, because they wasn't too bad.
No, it wasn't the best, but it was acceptable.
Championship, he gives you 20, 29, 14.
No, so playoff week. So week 14,
weeks,
29, 14 against Jacksonville, which is actually pretty good, considering them being the toughest defense against receivers.
And then 12.5.
And then 12.5 against Pittsburgh.
He gives you a touchdown.
Which that was a play from behind game, and they just didn't play good at all, that one.
And I mean, what more can you ask for?
It was enough to get by. I mean, especially that first week against San Francisco. But what hurt him, even though the volume was there, his play was there, what hurt him is just the quarterback after Watson went out, sat between Savage and Yates.
Yeah. He's my all-pro team, and I'm thinking next year he'll be number 1 all-pro with Watson at the helm again.
Oh, easily.
My second receiver, I'm going Tyreek Hill. I know Tyreek Hill bounced around. He was up and down depending on Alex Smith, but he finishes as a number 3 player. He gets rushing attempts. He's just always in the game plan. Tyreek Hill.
He finished off the last month
finished
strong.
Great. Yeah, his last 4 games are, 44 points. Then he gives you he gives you 75 yards. Then he gets 88 and a touchdown. And then in the final championship week, he gives you, in our league, it's 14.8 because you get a bonus once he crosses 100 yards. So,
yeah, we get a 4-point bonus.
That's nice.
We get a 4-point bonus for 100 yards.
That's nice.
So, yeah, he finished off strong. My receivers, Hopkins is obviously one, so I'm not going to go into detail on that. But he's my number 2 guy that I wrote down. Number 1 for me, which was my receiver this year, was Antonio Brown. Who was up, basically him and Hopkins were pretty much up to the top 2 receivers this year. Hopkins was he had the led in touchdowns, but Brown was just, when it came to the receptions and volume and stuff like that, Brown was leading in everything in that.
Yeah.
He was an MVP caliber candidate before his injury. It sucks to see him go because I'd like to see where he finished in the MVP rankings.
And it's funny because he had kind of a struggle at the beginning of the season, not getting open. It was kind of Big Ben's struggle, which made it his struggle. He was getting open, he just wasn't catching passes. Big Ben wasn't hitting him, wasn't targeting him. So he went through a few, small droughts just where things wasn't clicking. Because I remember him struggling, when he kicked the Gatorade bottle and was throwing fits on the sideline early in the season. So
he had 5 bad weeks, but the last week against New England when he got injured.
Yeah.
where he had the 24 yards.
And he should have caught that touchdown.
Yeah.
So.
But, I mean, he was pretty consistent throughout the whole year.
Dang.
Just a few hiccups. Yeah, but look at those. Look at that.
Week 12,
11,
40.
12, 13, 14. And he was already gonna like. I already know he was gonna do something damage against New England, and then Houston. He would have obliterated Houston. He would have had almost a 2-month stretch of monster weeks, which is why he was considered an MVP candidate.
Right.
So I'm gonna just jump on tight end. I'm not even going into detail on it. There was only this was like one of the worst years I've seen for tight ends, but there's only basically 3 guys that pretty much stood above and beyond everybody else. And I just went, basically there was not much of a big difference between 1 and 2, which we're both going to say. For my first team All-Pro fantasy, I wrote down Rob Gronkowski. He had finished right now with 1,084 yards and 8 touchdowns and a 2-point conversion. He had a killer year when he was playing. Missed a few games, suspension. I think there was an injury game in there too as well. Let's see. Yeah, week 5 was out for an injury. Then he had the bye week and then the suspension against Miami. But he was pretty much one of the most consistent tight ends out there.
He always is. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, always. He's Tom Brady's favorite target. And then I'll let you talk yours.
Travis Kelce.
Yeah,
it's easy.
Literally, they were
1,000-yard tight end.
Yeah,
8 touchdowns.
Pretty much identical.
Travis Kelce. If you have Travis Kelce in your league, every week you was certain that he was going to get targets, and you was certain that he's a playmaker and can score it from anywhere on the field at any point in time. And he definitely gave you what you needed from a tight end perspective, especially when tight ends were low this year. He was a lot better early in the season, just like Alex Smith was in the whole Chiefs offense. But still, in the last, what did he give you championship week? Playoff weeks, he gave you
10 points.
Let's see, week 14, he gave you, what is that, 7.5?
Yeah.
And then he gave you 4.6. Then he gives you a touchdown in championship week. And you finish with 10.
Which is what you want out of a tight end.
Which is what you
basically.
want. I mean, I was this year at one point I was just happy that my tight end contributed at all because I had a stretch where I went back and forth between Austin Seferian-Jenkins and Ricky Seals-Jones.
My tight end didn't do nothing championship week. Evan Ingram.
Gosh, they just went back and forth between who can score the lowest.
Yeah, anybody pretty much outside of Gronk, Kelce, and Ertz was a roller coaster ride with tight ends. It was up and down, up and down. Jimmy Graham finished off all right too.
Yeah,
he had 10 touchdowns, but
he still had some up and down games.
I mean, he was basically a touchdown dependent tight end because he only has under 500 yards receiving.
Yeah,
so not a great year for tight ends. But, I mean, just only like a handful of guys really, stood out above the rest of them.
Who do you think for your flex?
I wrote Kareem Hunt. I know he had the down period during the middle of the season, but really kicked it back into gear.
He gave you what you needed in the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's just because of like his points where he finished off at, and his value. I mean, if you traded for him, towards the end of the season, it turned out great for you. I mean, I know those last 6 weeks sucked. Like he had 3 good weeks and he had 3 bad weeks. Week 11 against the Giants 7. Then week 12 and 13, 2 points, 6 points, and then once the playoffs hit, Kareem Hunt was a great fantasy running back during the playoffs for fantasy football. Week 14, 24 points. Week 15, 37 points, and then championship week, he got 16 points, almost 17 points. Down week that championship week, a little bit considering what he's been doing all year. I think
still happy with that though.
I was still happy with it. I mean, I can't complain about the guy. He was he was a steal in the draft for me, getting him in the 11th round when I got him. So I mean, it's just it was a great year for Kareem Hunt.
And your Kareem Hunt and what he did for your team leads me to my flex and what he did for my team. I had Alvin Kamara. He didn't finish strong.
The rookies, man. This is the year of the rookies.
After having that concussion, he really didn't come back and do a whole lot. So he didn't really give you a lot in the playoffs. But, I mean, he was so fun to watch. He did so much for you over the course of the season that I think you're like
once that AP trade happened.
With it. And even in the last 2 weeks of the season, he gives you, 14 points? He gives you 15 points because he gives you about 40 rushing, receiving,
Flex
a touchdown. Yeah, and then in Atlanta he gives you 9 points. So that's probably, I mean, really, if I'm looking at flex and I'm looking at somebody who can give me 10 points.
Yeah, I mean, you want a guy to at least get you enough points because, I mean, that's why they're in the flex spot. I mean, if they go off in your flex spot, like, you know, basically once that trade happened, you know, for when AP got traded away from New Orleans, everything worked out in the Kamara's favor, and he was a steal off the waiver wire for people.
Touchdowns.
Yeah, great year for him. All right, so I'll just jump on to my kicker, and I think we both got the same guy.
We'll just
go and say Greg Zuerlein was above and beyond the best fantasy kicker this whole entire season. The Rams relied on him. They used him. He was the most consistent player. Right. I mean, in our league, points-wise, he had 210 points. The next guy had 189 points. So a big marginal difference between Greg the Leg and everybody else. All the next kickers in that little batch right there.
And he didn't even play the last week of the season.
Oh, he didn't even play.
So.
And he's still going to finish as the top fantasy kicker.
I know the guy who won our championship, he had Greg the Leg. And the matchup, I think we played like week 4.
Greg the Leg didn't play in our championship game, though.
Yeah, no, he didn't.
Which
it was week, go back up.
He got hurt. He played in week 15 in Seattle. He played with the herniated disc and got 12 points. But other than that, Greg the Leg.
When I played Greg the Leg,
I'm just going to read off his points for this season: 20, 11, 12, 33, 5, 12, 20. Bye week 19, 20. 1 point against Minnesota. That was a bad game for the Rams. Week 12 against New Orleans, 21. Then 19. 5, 12, and then didn't play the last week of the fantasy season.
I got lucky, and I played him that week. He scored 33 points, so it was great.
He's unreal, and I mean, he might be one of those kickers you reach out for next year because the Rams are going to use him the exact same next year as they did this year.
Right.
And the same with a couple other kickers too. I feel like a few other kickers get an uptick next year, like Harrison Butker for Kansas City. They used him a lot. Mm-hmm. Chris Boswell was used a lot more this year.
When Baltimore's entire offense comes back healthy, their whole first team, Justin Tucker probably have a little bit more value.
Yeah, he'll still be ranked high.
He fell
I think.
A few spots this year, and they lost their entire offensive line.
Yeah, I mean he had a down. Like he started off the season. Shit. Actually, you know what? Look at this. He started off slow, and then look. From week 5 on, he didn't score nothing under double digits. Mm-hmm. So look, 14, 17, 11. 15, 11, bye week, 13, 17, 20, 10, 12, 14. Yeah. So they relied. That's why, you know, Baltimore's in the playoff hunt right now, just because I feel like he's a key asset behind that because they use Justin Tucker a lot. Yeah. And then Will Lutz kind of fell off at the end. But so we'll jump on our defense. It's a unanimous answer.
Easily, Jacksonville Jaguars. Yeah,
they were above and
they were just so ridiculous.
It's crazy though. Everyone was doubting them. You know, they were ranked 8th in a lot of poll or cheat sheets this season and preseason rankings. People were like, oh, because you already knew on paper, like looking at their team on paper, you're like, okay, this is going to be a great defense, but let's actually see how they play.
Right.
And Jacksonville's defense lived up, and I think above and beyond the hype. They were in our league. They were 20 points ahead of the next defense, and 26 points again ahead of the third defense. And then against the fourth defense, they're almost 40. They are 45 points above the next other defense. Ridiculous. So,
and what sticks out to me is they scored more touchdowns than anyone else with 6. They had more sacks than anyone else by 4. And they allowed the least amount of points than anyone else. And that's what you want from your fantasy defense.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are certain defenses that, you know, stood up there. There was a lot of surprise defenses this year, too, as well, in terms of fantasy. Like New Orleans was a surprise defense. Detroit, I would say, was a surprise defense. And Chicago, even though they are, like, 10th ranked defense, I believe. Yeah, 10th ranked defense. Surprise defense. I mean, a lot of top defenses fell off, but we'll get more into that when we talk more on our bust team. I think we've been chatting a little longer than we want to on this, so now we'll just move on and go a little bit quicker through this on our bust team. And I'll just go through my entire bust team real quick, and then you can go through yours. So my all-pro, all-bust team for fantasy this year, basically the players that did not meet expectations. You drafted them in a certain you draft, they had a high ranking in the preseason. You drafted them in a certain particular spot in the draft. They did not live up to expectations. They were inconsistent throughout the whole entire season. That's what I have mine based off of. Basically the key thing is like their draft value. So they didn't meet their draft value at all. So quarterback, I'm going to say Matt Ryan was my quarterback. It's just been a down year for, I would say, the Falcons in general offensively and compared to where they were last year. Running backs, DeMarco Murray. He was ranked in the top 10 in the preseason. In some leagues, he was ranked in some preseason polls, he was ranked number 10. Other ones I've seen him up as 5. He did not live up to the hype at all. That run smash mouth style of the Titans did not live up to hype at all this year. It was another down year for the Titans. Next running back I wrote was Devontae Freeman. Very inconsistent year for him. Banged up, battling injuries. You can look at him. You're like, oh, he wasn't that bad. He's 13th running back in fantasy. He only had 5 games where he met double-digit points. Other than that, he was just that offense did not flow through him. Very bad. I wouldn't say it was a bad season, but I just don't think it was a great season that he had. My wide receivers, I wrote down Julio Jones. A lot of people drafted Julio Jones in the probably top 5 of their first round, somewhere early in the first round for fantasy football. Yeah. Even though he finished as the number 5 wide receiver in fantasy football, it's just because he had a monster game week 12. The 50 points, like in our league, he had 50 points in week 12 against Tampa Bay when he had the 253, 2 touchdowns. I feel like that's the only reason he finished up where he was at. He was not consistent all year long. He only had the 3 touchdowns, even though he finished with almost 1,400 yards receiving because he was the top receiver on that team. Obviously, you're going to throw to Julio Jones. He's a superstar receiver. Right. It's just in terms of fantasy football, I just don't think he lived up to the hype that you wanted on a consistent basis.
He just didn't live up to the draft pick, yeah.
No, he didn't live up. Like in our league, he was drafted number 4 in our league, and he was traded, but he did not live up to that. Yeah, he wasn't that first-round draft value.
He's nowhere near the 4th overall player.
No, not at all. Especially when, like in our league, his total points is 179, basically 180, and Antonio Brown was our number 1 receiver at 252. Almost 100 point. It was an 80-point difference.
And I'm sure there's 5 or 6 running backs ahead of him too.
Yes. The other wide receiver I wrote down, which a lot of people drafted there in their top 2 rounds, was Mike Evans. Very, very, very bad
I
year
almost
for Mike
took
Evans.
him at 7 too.
It's crazy. It's just that whole offense was just not playing the stat. Like he didn't play bad. Like the first game you got him in week 2, 93 yards and a touchdown. Then the next week after that, 67 yards. And the next week after that,
he was so.
He was like. He started off slow.
Jameis went down, and then it just...
Yeah, I mean, now if you had him in your playoffs, he probably finished off all right. He punched off pretty good for you. But it's just... Yeah. I just feel like to where you drafted him at and how he played throughout the whole year, especially through weeks 8 and 14, you were not a happy camper with Mike Evans as your receiver. But it was hard to sit him because you know how good he can be. Tight end, I wrote Jordan Reed down. A lot of people drafted Jordan Reed early. He was considered a top 3 tight end beginning of the season.
And then didn't play at all, did he?
He just didn't really play. The injuries, he played a couple games. Just the injuries kept, from where you drafted him, the injuries just kept him down. Let me go pop him up real quick on here.
I felt like he didn't play at
all. Look, 211 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Oh, wow.
He had one good week, and that was week 7 against Philadelphia. 64 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then he played against Dallas in week 8, got 5 yards. That's it. And I think that's the week he got hurt, and he didn't play the rest of the season. For where teams drafted, like in our league, he was drafted in the 4th round. Mm-hmm. Let's see, the end of the 4th round. Yeah, end of the 4th round. He just didn't play good. He did not live up to the hype. Vernon Davis was the better tight end on that team. Jordan Reed just has battled injuries his entire career. Next player, my flex player, is going to be Jay Ajayi. From where he was ranked, I know he was ranked in the top 5 at running backs just because of how he finished last year with Miami. Started off very slow with Miami this year, then gets traded to Philadelphia. Did have one good game against Philadelphia. And let me look this up. I just want to be accurate with how he played. All players. Let's see. He finished. Let's see. Well, it's basically. The big thing was where he finished at too. Jay Ajayi was your preseason rank, he was the number 5 running back. He finishes at 29 running back. He had, week 2, he had a good game in Miami. That's not the matchup because that's all Eagles' schedule right there. But let's see. He had 4 games in double digits. So, he wasn't a running back that was consistent for you like how he was when he played for Miami last year. At the end
when he was putting up 200 yards a game.
Yeah, he had the 2 straight 200-yard games last year.
Yeah.
But in terms of where you drafted him this year, because he was in the second round, he was drafted in the second round in our league. And to how he finished, he was not worth that pick.
Not at all.
Not at all. The next 2 players I won't go into detail. Adam Vinatieri, I think from where he's, where he was ranked at and just how he finished, he was end up finishing as now I got to look it up because I want to say the right number. Adam Vinatieri finished as the number 16 kicker. What hurt them, I think, what hurt Adam Vinatieri was that Andrew Luck didn't play at all this year.
Yeah, terrible offense.
And my defense, now that I'm going to say, it was the Denver Broncos. Denver Broncos finished as the number 21 defense when they were probably number 1 in the preseason for rankings.
And
Denver
their
just
highest, they scored over 15 points once.
Yeah, there's 23 points right there, week 14 against the Jets. And that's the Jets without
Bryce Petty-led Jets.
Yes. So
yeah.
Denver was just a letdown defense for people, and I'm surprised.
I'm sure people reached for them too. There's always that one person who reaches.
They were reached in our league too by Ray.
Yeah.
Ray took them early on. It looks like he took them in the 10th round. Let's see, is that what I'm seeing? 10th or 9th round? So it looks like I can't see our draft board from this far.
It's 9. Broncos with the second pick in 9th round.
Yeah, so, people reach for that defense just because how great they were last year.
Yeah.
All right, I'll let you run through your bust team real quick.
My bust team, number 1's Drew Brees. Drew Brees is coming off 5,000-yard seasons, tons of touchdowns. He comes off, he doesn't do hardly anything. It was kind of the Mark Ingram show and the Alvin Kamara show, but, what do you expect with those 2 great backs? Let's see, Drew Brees finishes at 9, just inside the top 10, just breaks the top 10. Luckily, he was a 3rd quarterback taken, and in your league, maybe even higher than that. Some people. He was a 5th-round draft pick in our league. So, if you wait on a quarterback, you're still taking Drew Brees. He was still probably top 5 back. He finished as 9th. He just didn't have any of those big games that Drew Brees is known for. You were probably drafting Drew Brees thinking he's getting you 5,000 yards or close to, maybe 4,500 yards and 30 touchdowns. And realistically, he was falling short on both those goals. My running backs were Isaiah Crowell, because I can remember preseason Isaiah Crowell. Oh, they got a new revamped offensive line. Jackson is steering the ship in the right direction. This offense is going to do something this year. Kaiser is going to help them move the ball. They're going to have a good solid defense led by a first-round pick and, hammering, battering offensive line and
what's crazy for
and running back with Isaiah Crowell. And he just kind of fell off a cliff.
Cleveland was the number 2 team this season and last season in terms of yards per carry.
That's
in terms they were good at running the ball, but it just they're 0-15 right now.
Yeah,
but
and
Crow was the 3rd round in our draft.
And let's see where did he finish? Not where you wanted him to finish, I can tell you that. Duke Johnson finished higher than him.
Yeah, Crowell.
So you definitely took Crowell over.
27.
He's 27th. Come on. I fell in the Crowell trap too in one of my leagues and ended up just releasing him and letting him go. He had 4 double-digit games the whole season, and he only scored 2 touchdowns. 2 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah.
That's a letdown. I'm sorry. He's a 3rd-round pick in our draft. He's probably a 2nd or 3rd-round pick in your draft, depending on how many people you have and who believed in him. And he disappointed. Next running back was somebody I think that a lot of people was high on. Some people even reached for because the potential there was huge, thanks to what LeGarrette Blount left there to fill. Mike Gillislee. How many people did Mike Gillislee just destroy this year? Because
he started off the season great.
That first game.
He was like, okay, I'm ready for a touchdown machine.
And he had 3 the first game.
He had like what 4 touchdowns total in the year.
Probably. Yeah, all of them coming in the first game. He had what was it? Was it Indianapolis?
Let's see, week 1.
What was their
let's
week
see, 3.
one?
Yeah, he had the touchdowns the first 2 weeks. So 3 touchdowns against Kansas City.
Yeah, 3 against Kansas City.
Yeah, so 22.5 points, and then against New Orleans the second week, 69,
and then nothing.
and 1 touchdown, and then
a few yards scattered here and there, and then after the bye week, he does nothing. Oh, and then the last week, of course,
championship
week, he comes
Flex
out
play.
and gets a touchdown. Who was out that week? Burkhead.
Burkhead didn't play.
Burkhead didn't play, and he was active. That's right.
Burkhead became that goal line back for them.
So Mike Gillislee, obviously he was probably, preseason ranking, he was a top 15 back, and some people were probably thinking this guy could end up taking that role that LeGarrette Blount played the previous, last year when he had 18 touchdowns, and you drafted him, and you may have reached. Hopefully, you didn't reach on him.
People reached for him.
I think people reached for him too, and you were disappointed. Sadly disappointed. Okay, my receivers. One receiver that I've had on my team every single year since the league has started, because I make it a point to even reach for him if I have to, is Jordy Nelson. This is the one year I didn't have him on my team, and it's a pretty good year not to have him because he was a top 8 receiver drafted preseason, and he finished, goodness gracious, as like the 8th receiver.
He was drafted in our first round at the end. He was the number 10 pick in our first round. Yeah, he was the 10
pick in our league, and he drafted, and he fell big time.
Yeah, so because he was, I think, a top 5 receiver.
But I think part of that is he finished the 45th receiver. That's crazy. Part of that is the Aaron Rodgers injury, because before Aaron Rodgers is injured, he's got 6 touchdowns and about 250 yards throughout the first 5 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
Throughout the first 5 weeks, and he missed the Atlanta game with injury. So in 4 games, he scored 6 touchdowns and about 225 yards. So he was definitely on pace for
He was a top receiver in the league.
He was on pace for a 14 touchdown year again.
Yeah.
And just didn't get it. Probably because of the Aaron Rodgers injury, because they have that connection. So he may be somebody, but I do think he's starting to slow down. He's getting older. He'll be 30. He is 30.
Those leg injuries are slowly catching up with him in terms of slowing him down.
A lot of knees, ACLs, ankles, hamstrings.
This is becoming the Devontae Adams team now.
Yeah, I agree. So Jordy, he let you down, obviously. He was a first-round, second-round pick, and he was finished for wide receiver 45. My next, oh my gosh, this one is a personal letdown, because he let me down so badly. There's so many players that I could have picked instead of this Dilho.
Oh, another wide receiver.
Terrelle Pryor.
Yeah.
Just shot the bed.
He was a top
shot everywhere.
15 receiver in rankings.
And he was another like Mike Gillislee. I mean, the potential was huge for him. He was my 3rd round pick because I ended up getting Melvin Gordon and then Ezekiel Elliott in the first 2 rounds. And I needed to go wide receiver for a few rounds. So I take Terrelle Pryor with the potential that he could do great things with Kirk Cousins and put up these huge numbers and be just a messiah of fantasy points for the receiver. And he did nothing. Terrelle Pryor, I'm not sure that he ever even caught a touchdown. Let me go look. I traded him away early in the season, so I'm not really sure. But I know that he was bad. Jeez. He finished with 240 yards and 1 touchdown.
Week against Kansas City.
Yes,
week 4.
And that's the week that I traded him. The week after his big touchdown is the week that I traded him. I ended up talking to the guy and saying that he was going to have they were going to get it together on the bye week and he'd come back strong.
And he gives you Julio.
And then he gives me Julio.
But Julio, had just a couple good weeks after that too, so it wasn't true. Like it was monster.
It was a Terrelle Pryor and Doug Martin.
Yeah,
I feel Doug Martin was coming off suspension, so you wasn't sure. Doug Martin had only played 1 game, and he had 80 yards and a touchdown. He looked very good. I thought I was kind of losing something in that trade, but it played out wonderfully for me, even though Julio wasn't really Julio. He outperformed Pryor and Doug Martin by far.
Well, you'll see Pryor on another team next year.
Pryor sucked, and he hurt me. Which leads me to my flex play, who was another receiver, because you probably wanted to if you didn't draft Amari Cooper. And he shot the bed as well.
Oh God, yeah.
So he was my flex player that did not play well. He was such a roller coaster. He really only had one big game, and I think that was against Kansas City, where he lit him up for, 200 yards.
It was that Thursday night game.
Yeah. Besides that, he didn't even have a startable game the rest of the season. Let's see, how did Cooper finish? The wide receiver, 37, and he had a ton of height.
Look, week one he did
potential.
good, 62 and a touchdown, and then that Kansas City, then he didn't do nothing after that.
Nothing. Not over. He had a few touchdowns the last.
That Kansas City game, then he had but he didn't
weeks.
have the yards though. The volume wasn't there for him.
No, it was just. It's
and
horrible.
then championship week,
there are so many zeros on here that it's terrible. How many? He has 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's where the injuries happen. Basically,
5, 6. He has 6 games where he has less than 1 point. That's bust. Fantasy bust. Sorry, it's a bust. My fantasy bust for tight ends is basically leads me to injuries. I wanted to go with Eifert, but then it hit me that Eifert is hurt almost every season. Yeah. So
he didn't even really get the chance to do anything this year.
So I'm going to go with Greg Olson because he hasn't been hurt in the last 10 seasons. He hasn't missed a game in forever. He was like that tight end Iron Man with 1,000 yards receiving in the last 8 seasons. So he was almost – you picked Greg Olson high, and you knew that his ceiling was extremely high and his floor was extremely high because he was going to get you 1,000 yards and probably 6 touchdowns. That was his floor. And, the injury hurt him and set him back big time. So.
Well, he didn't even do nothing the first 2 weeks anyways.
No.
And then that's when the injury happened, out for those 8 weeks, and then he comes back. 1 point.
With anyway. And then he re-injured it, yeah. And then, of course, against Green Bay, he puts up 100 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Greg Olson. And
nothing championship week, really. Just
27 points.
2.7.
But he was a big letdown because you probably drafted him in the first. I mean, he was one of the top 3 tight ends taken, and he busted up for you. My kicker and defense are both from Kansas City. Santos and the Kansas City Chiefs.
I think he ended up on the Bears.
Santos ended up on a different team. Yeah, he finished with the Bears. He had groin injuries and bounced around with sporadic play, so he ended on the Bears roster. And I think actually they picked up a different kicker. They had somebody else starting the last few weeks.
Yeah, he ended up getting put on the IR.
Which is funny. The reason I put him on here is because last season I had the Kansas City Chiefs and Santos on my championship winning team, and they were putting up 20 points per game in the playoffs. Kansas City defense lose Eric Berry early in the season, and they fall apart over the course of the season. And you drafted them probably as the top 3 defense because that was their preseason rank, and they finished horribly for you. Santos, you draft him as probably a top 5 kicker because that's what he finished last year, and that was his preseason ranking. And he finished poorly.
Injuries got him.
Yeah, he didn't even finish on the same team.
No.
Wow.
The rookie gets played.
Yeah, Kansas City defense finishes 16th overall.
They started off good.
They started off good, yeah. Once that Eric Berry injury hit, they had one good game, which was against Denver.
Playoffs, they were a good defense.
Ooh, playoffs, they did have 12, 15.
That's just when they turned it around. That's when they did
Oakland,
the switch of coordinators and stuff, too.
Oakland Chargers and Miami.
They were a good playoff defense, but pretty much as a consistent defense throughout the whole year, I would say they were a bust, too. There's a few other teams we can list, too, as defenses that were bust, in my opinion, too. Like Cardinals would be one. Texans,
yeah.
But I think the J.J. Watt injury hurt them that much, but then they got injured. Yeah. They had a bunch of injuries on that defense.
They had a ton. And, Will Fork leaving, too, and retiring.
Mm-hmm. So, those are our first team, all-pro fantasy and all-bust fantasy.
So now we're going to do our
we'll go into more detail maybe the next week or something like that, talking about other teams and stuff like that. I mean, I got a second, third team. I got an all-rookie. I got a surprise team, basically your out-of-nowhere team, basically your top pickups on the waiver wire from positions, stuff like that.
Yeah, we'll have some fun.
So we'll go into more detail with that.
So right now we're going to do a little bit of a DFS style, just go back and forth and draft players who are playing and are available week 17. There's Bill, Big Ben, there's players around the league who aren't playing, just being rested up. We're just going to pick 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, a flex option, which can be either a receiver or a back, a tight end, a kicker, and a defense from those players who are starting this week. And then we'll kind of just tell who does what. Is this your...
Yeah, so this is how we'll determine our first.
All right, we're flipping a coin.
So I'll let you do it because you finished third in our league, and I finished just ahead of you. So yeah, heads or tails.
Okay, flip it tails. Dang.
Heads. I got first.
3 in a row. I should have said heads. All right, you'll take first. I'll take second.
All right. So what we're going to do is we're using Fantasy Pros website, and we're using their expert rankings for the week, based on positions and stuff like that. So, and we're going to do 9 rounds. We're going to fill up our fantasy rosters. What we're going to do. So quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, 1 tight end, a flex player, and a kicker, and then a defense. So what I'll do, since there's a lot of players that have been ruled out this week. So what I'm going to do is start off. Let's see. I'm going to look through the running back rankings for this week.
Is the Rams setting players, defensive players?
Yeah, I know Aaron Donald's setting. They're setting Aaron Donald. Yes. So what I'm going to do is start off with running backs. So what we're going to do, since I get the first pick, I only get pick once, and then you pick twice.
Yeah.
And then I'll pick twice, so we'll go from there and stuff like that until we fill up our roster. So this shouldn't take too long. So
can you go from position instead of position? Can you go all offense?
Let me see.
Because if we're only doing,
no, this doesn't allow me to look all offense. It just bases up. I can do flex, and it'll do skills players and stuff like that too. That's where that loads. Give it a sec.
Yeah.
Load. So we'll do flex, and there's your. That's even with running backs, and then wide receiver 1 and 2 and stuff like that. Of course, I'm going to draft it like I would at a fantasy draft right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because since there's only 2 quarterbacks that's going to be taken, so I'm not dreading on that real quick.
Yeah.
So since I got the first
You're
pick,
on the clock.
I'm on the clock. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take Alvin Kamara with my first pick. They're playing at Tampa Bay. And Kamara, according to Fantasy Pros website of their expert rankings, he is ranked the number 1 running back. So I will stick with Alvin Kamara, and I think hopefully he has a bounce-back week that helps his Pro Bowl vote, too. Of course, they're going to be fighting for a division win as well, too. The Saints are trying to, beat out the Panthers and Falcons for the division win right now, so we'll see how this goes. So Alvin Kamara is off the board now. Jessy, you are on the clock.
It's interesting. I'm going to go just recent trends and players who are playing. I'm going Kenyan Drake.
Okay. Good pick. That's
I just want to pick somebody who wasn't on my road team. He is playing at home against Buffalo. He's been very good here lately. Buffalo's defense is prone to let you drop 50 on them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be pretty sunny, nice weather in Miami this weekend. So.
All right, and you got another pick, too. You got 2 in a row.
Ooh, I do.
So we're going to do it snake style just between us 2.
This is tough. I might just get both those backs in that game. Well, with my second running back, or do I want to get a receiver and even it out? I'm going to take, not you, Julio. Let me just scroll for a minute. Let's see what it is.
Thomas.
I'm just looking at the receivers this week.
Let's see. Oh, yeah. So there's A.J. Green, Marvin Jones, Mike Evans, Doug Baldwin, Adam Thielen.
Thielen could be.
I think Minnesota's playing for trying to get the number 1 seed right now, so they're hoping for a Philly loss.
Yeah.
So there's Larry Fitz at Seattle, which that's a tough one. Brandon Cooks, T.Y. Hilton, Juju Smith-Schuster against Cleveland. He's been filling in pretty good in place of Antonio Brown. There's Jarvis Landry right there,
I'm
too.
I'm going to go Keenan Allen versus
Keenan
Oakland.
Allen?
Yeah.
That's a good one, right? That's a really good one right there.
K.A.
All right.
It's my guy.
All right, now that I'm on the clock, I'm going to take a running back first, and I'm just going to go in and take Ezekiel Elliott.
I thought about it. That matchup is just nasty.
Like it's a tough matchup.
You just remember when he dropped 50 on you, and it's just stuck. It's just.
You know what? Right now I'm drafting your team right now by the looks of
That's
it.
That's true.
Here's Ezekiel Elliott, but,
Well, he's playing for you this week, so it's a little different than my team. He's playing this week. That's nice.
Yeah, so Ezekiel Elliott is my first of the 2 picks, and my second pick. So you took Keenan Allen, top receiver.
Mm-hmm. I'm
going to go on and do, Let's do. Oh, I'm trying to think how they would play, and I'm going to do. You know what? I'm going to go in and take Michael Thomas against Tampa Bay. So I'm going to kind of stick with the Saints right here for some of these guys right here.
Sure.
I think Thomas can bounce back. I know he was limited in practice today, but I just think. I know he didn't give off a great fantasy football performance. There was a lot of people freaking out because of his injury going in right before that championship week, stuff like that. So, and he didn't really deliver. I mean, he had 66 yards. It hurt a little bit, from what he was doing the previous few weeks.
Yeah,
he was going off. He was like one of the top receivers the last handful of weeks. So, yeah.
And I'm all just. Based off value and him being a beast, I'm going to take Mark Ingram. I'm just going to get the other side of that matchup.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to skip on down and take Gronk.
Ooh,
well, I'm going to look. Who does Kelce play this week?
He's not playing.
He's not?
Kelce's not playing.
Oh, well, then I'm definitely taking Gronk.
Yeah, I was thinking Gronk, too, with those two picks. But
So, yeah, there you go.
All right.
Back to you.
All right, so back to me.
Mark Ingram and Rob Gronkowski was my last two picks.
Good picks. All right, so trying to fill in the void. You know what? They're fighting for a playoff spot. I think I know he was on my bust list, but I'm going to go in and take Julio Jones. Yeah.
He's so tempting because he could put up 50 points.
Because you know what he can do. That's the thing. You know what Julio Jones is capable of, and he's a superstar elite receiver. And it's hard to pass up on him right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then another
He's played
team
very
playing
well
for,
at
yeah,
home.
And the way here's how you look at Week 17. You're looking at those teams that are playing for that last playoff spot, those wild card spots.
Right.
Like NFC South is playing for a division and a wild card spot. Based on Atlanta fighting for the wild card spot.
Yeah.
And same with Carolina. Carolina's pretty much locked in, almost near locked into that. Actually, they pretty much are locked into the playoff spot. It's basically Atlanta and Seattle fighting for the last playoff spot. So that's why I'm going to stick with Julio Jones as my first of these last picks. And then my next one, I'm going to do... Let's do... You've had a flex spot yet? You haven't picked a flex yet?
I haven't got a flex yet. I'm getting ready to
snag
one here.
I'm thinking about one right now. Then I'm thinking about a quarterback also right now. But I'm going to go in and take for a flexer. I'm going to take LaShawn McCoy. I figured that's who you was thinking.
That's what I was going to do.
But I can't pass him up right now just because, whether it's just us two, but it's crazy. You're looking at like these handful of guys and you're also looking at their matchups as well too. But then you're also factoring like, okay, how's this team going to play out this week? Some of them don't even have to worry about playing too much like Pittsburgh, or is Ben Roethlisberger going to play the full game? He's out, actually. Ben Roethlisberger is not playing this week. Landry Jones is the quarterback, I believe. So, it's just a lot of teams are just playing for shits and giggles. A lot of teams are actually playing for it. Look, right there's Melvin Gordon all the way down there. But is he playing?
He got a leg injury, so ankle injury.
There's your boy, Isaiah Crowell.
Psych.
Devin let me down Funches.
My boy Josh Gordon down there.
Yeah.
He let me down.
Cleveland's still playing for that first win, too.
Leonard Fournette, what's he doing down here?
I just don't think he's going to play as much. Let's read up on his stats.
Is he hurt?
Let's see notes. This is not a feud if you're a fantasy owner or the Jaguars. Fournette has been dealing with the ankle and quad injuries as of late, so playing him in a game that means essentially nothing makes little sense. On top of that, the Titans have allowed just 3.4 yards per carry, 4 rushing touchdowns.
Keep scrolling. I'll find a matchup here in a second. I like Brian. I wish Big Ben was playing. Does Dez have something to prove this week?
That he's worth the money he's making.
Because they've been ragging him. I feel bad for the dude. They've been ripping him apart.
Yeah. I mean, Le'Veon Bell's, I don't even know why Le'Veon Bell. I think because they haven't officially 100% considered them out for the game, but most likely Big Ben and Le'Veon Bell's not playing this week.
See, I don't like any of these people in any of these games.
It's tough. And then Kareem Hunt's already out, too. He's not playing this week either. Shakadrick West is playing, and Patrick Mahomes is getting the start, too. But it's against Denver, so that's already tough.
That's okay. My flex is going to be Marvin Jones.
It's a good one.
Just the
He's the number 5 receiver this week against Green Bay at home, so that helps out a lot.
Matchup for them.
You got another pick too right now.
And then I guess I can take a look at.
Let's see.
Actually, let's go.
Marvin Jones would be your number 2 receiver.
Let's move Marvin Jones into my wide receiver 2, and damn, now I need a flex.
So you can go up.
Skill players.
Let's see.
Come on.
Well, there's Freeman, Dion Lewis.
I'm going.
Remember, Atlanta playing for it. Good matchup right there for Dion Lewis. Derrick Henry is DeMarco Murray is out. He's not playing, so Derrick Henry is getting the start.
G.J. Anderson doesn't look bad. Neither does Carlos Hyde, especially if.
I think San Francisco's just playing to win it right now. Is what they're doing. Rams don't have anything to play for because they don't, which is why they're sitting. Goff, Kupp's out. Gurley's out on offense.
I'm gonna go with my. I'm going to move Marvin Jones, going to be my wide receiver, too. With my flex, I'm going to go Devontae Freeman because he's been on fire the last few weeks. He's been their offense. They keep handing the ball off for some reason.
Yeah, he still gets it.
I'll take Freeman.
Okay. All right. So
happy
I'm
with
looking
that.
for a tight end. Let's see. I'm going to go for... Well, let's see. I'm looking at Antonio Gates. He's the number 6 tight end ranked for this week. Chargers are playing for a playoff spot. I think I might do. Let's see. Greg Olson had a good game and then a bad game. And Atlanta's actually pretty tough on tight ends. You picked Gronk already. You know what? I'm going to go with... I'm just going to throw my dice in on... I think I might do Jimmy Graham.
Okay.
Seattle's trying to fight for that last playoff spot. Jimmy Graham is a red zone target for them. He's not a big yards guy for Seattle at all. I think, Seattle's at home. They're playing to get into that playoff spot. So that's my first pick. My next pick, so I'm going to go with my quarterback now to fill this in. Let's see. Russell Wilson's ranked number 1, so I feel like I want to take him, but there's Tom Brady and there's Cam Newton. Cam Newton, who's been on fire. I feel like doing like a wild card pick though too for quarterbacks. Jimmy G is tempting. I don't want to do like your obvious picks because they might not be playing for much of anything. Jimmy G is just playing for fun right now at this point. Same with Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is just trying to prove his worth.
Right.
Stafford has nothing to play for. Phillip Rivers is playing for a playoff spot. Drew Brees is playing for a division win. Cam Newton's playing for a division win. Brady is playing for nothing at this point. They essentially are locked into where they're at. I think I want to. Oh man, I think I want to do Phillip Rivers. I'm gonna do Phillip Rivers. I know Cam Newton is tempting for me right now, but I think I want to do Phillip Rivers. I just think the game against Atlanta for Panthers is going to be a little bit tougher just because both teams are fighting for that win, and it's a division game too. And I think Phillip Rivers is an easy matchup against Oakland.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Matt Stafford because they're playing us and we suck, basically.
Matt Stafford at home against the Packers, and a great matchup for him. And you got another pick now.
And then
so we got kicker and defense left.
Let's go see what the defenses look like. I'll take a kicker in the last round.
Yeah. So Pittsburgh is number 1 this week because they play Cleveland.
Yeah, but I'm sure they're resting starters as well. I know what I'm going to do. Right here it looks like.
Broncos do play a lesser offense in Kansas City. No Smith, no Kelce, no Tyreek Hill, no Hunt.
It's true.
Patrick Mahomes is starting.
It's a tough one. I think I'm going to go with the defense.
Let's see. I mean, there's a lot of good matchups for these defenses.
There's
this
really
week
just
too.
two that I'm trying to choose. I'm trying to choose between two defenses. Both have great matchups.
All right, just pick one.
Let's see the worst. And then average.
I think that's average rank is what this is.
I'm going to do the Chargers at home against Oakland.
Chargers at home against Oakland.
Spot. Oakland's been struggling. Yeah, I'm going to do the Chargers defense.
Okay. And I will. I'm just trying to think. Like a Minnesota is tempting to take, just because it's a good matchup for them defensively. Like I picked them up for championship week, and they did good for me against Green Bay.
Yeah, they're at home.
I think I'm going to take the Baltimore Ravens
versus Cincinnati.
Yeah, because I mean the Ravens are still fighting for playoff spot. And I just think with Harbaugh as the coach and just the right people there, they can get them hyped up. And Joe Flacco, when he wants to play, he can play, and that offense can control the game too, and then keep the defense off the field.
I wanted to take Jacksonville, but I wanted to go with the not so. Now the number one defense. And then for a kicker, do I really care which kicker I get? I'm gonna take.
It's more like which team's going to use their kicker the most.
Yeah.
I have mine in mind if you don't take them. Well, it's a tough matchup too, though.
And with my kicker, I'm going to take Robbie Gould.
That's who I was leaning towards. It is a tough matchup.
He's been good.
But
he's been
they'll
great.
use him.
He's been great.
Especially with Garoppolo being there.
Yeah.
Well, I will.
Lesser Rams team. He should be fine.
Yeah, let's see. I think I'm going to do. I just don't think they're going to move the ball. I was looking at Bucker. I can't to say, but without pretty much their starters, I don't think they're going to get anybody in there. Basically, I don't know. I think I might do. I just think Green Bay's going to let more touchdowns than field goals. I'm gonna go with Pittsburgh's kicker, Chris Boswell.
Yeah, I was thinking about him too. He's been playing well.
I'm going to do Chris Boswell.
All right, my lineup for QB, I got Matt Stafford. My running back 1 is Kenyan Drake, followed by Mark Ingram. Well, really should be backwards probably. My wide receivers are Keenan Allen and Marvin Jones. Tight end is Rob Gronkowski. My flex player is Devontae Freeman. My kicker is Robbie Gould, and the defense is not the San Diego Chargers. The L.A. Chargers.
Should be in San Diego.
The L.A. Chargers.
All right, well, my quarterback is Phillip Rivers. Then I got running backs Alvin Kamara, Ezekiel Elliott, wide receivers Michael Thomas and Julio Jones. Hopefully they bounce back. Tight end, I got Jimmy Graham. I think he's going to be a red zone monster. Then flex play, I got LaShawn McCoy.
I should have took McCoy earlier.
Yeah, and then I got a kicker, Chris Boswell, for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then I got Ravens defense. So
we're going by our league standards.
We'll go by our league standards and see what they do. So I'll add it all up. When we go see how they play out this week.
Yeah, we'll come do it. So they get bonuses.
This is the Week 17 wrap-up challenge game.
So they get.
This is for the podcast championship, is what this is for.
Passers get 300 or 400 yard bonuses. They also get bonuses for plays over 40 or 50 yards or touchdown plays. Same thing for receivers.
Yeah, if it is like a 50-yard touchdown, they get the bonus for the 40 yards and the 50 yards.
Same
which
thing.
Is almost like 9 points right there
Yeah.
itself, and then the touchdown, include that in, and then whatever the total yardage is too.
Yeah. So it's the same thing for receivers and rushers. They go over 100 yards, they get a bonus. They go over 200, they get a bigger bonus. If they also have the 40 to 50 yard big play bonuses. If they have a 60-yard touchdown run, they get a bonus for going over 40 and 50 yards on that. So it's big plays count. And that's it. We'll add it up and let you know what the breakdowns are next week. And we'll go through our, All-Pro team, All-Pro second team, All-Pro third team.
We'll probably go a little bit quicker because we lied to y'all when we said this is going to be short and sweet. And right now we're talking over here almost a minute. And we're over an hour and 10 minutes right now.
Yeah, we're just savoring the last few days of football.
We got the gift of gab and a left with a jab, all right? That's what happens here.
That's it.
So, yeah. We'll future episodes again, just a refresher right now. So we're already starting. We're in the process of doing our fantasy all-pro fantasy teams for the season. Then we'll do our fantasy football wrap-up 2017 awards, where we give out most valuable player. We'll do best quarterback of the year, best quarterback, best running back, best wide receiver, tight end, etc. Just all, and then come up with our random awards on our own and stuff like that. Best your typical fantasy football awards itself. Then we'll do our 2017 redraft special, where we redraft a fantasy football league based on our 10-team league. We'll do it off that. Hopefully we'll have a few more guests on that episode. We'll do that one a little bit down the line when we feel like we can organize everybody and get, not everybody, but we'll get a few of us together. We'll probably draft for each of us will take 2 teams each.
Yep.
So we'll try to get 5 of us here, and we'll pass a mic around, just chit chat and see who we draft. Some of them might not go into detail on who they take or why they take them there, but we'll base it off how everyone finished out this year in fantasy football. Then also we'll do our way too early 2018 rankings. That's going to be a little bit, a fun one right there itself too. How we're going to rank, how we see guys will be ranked next year. We might sprinkle in a couple of rookies here and there and see how they, pan out too as well. But that's all we got for this week's Week 17 Fantasy Football Wrap-Up Episode 19 is where we're at now.
That's all.
We're almost at 20. That'll be next week. We're slowing these down just a little bit just because the season's over with. The holidays are over with, so we might pick up a little bit more here and there, but we'll just stick with probably once a week is what we'll do. I got nothing else to add, so best of luck in our Fantasy Football Wrap-Up Week 17 Podcast Championship. May the best team win. Me. So that's a wrap.
Wrap it up.